Welcome everyone to the Expand podcast. We have Zarin Beatty and Conrad Jeffries today. Thank you for being here, man. We recently met each other on Instagram. You also host a podcast in Boise, the Pro Edge podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, the Pro Edge podcast under Channel 99 Studios.
Excellent. We kind of came together because we both host a podcast. We're gonna try and learn about each other right here, which is pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the reason I got into podcasting is, I try to take some advice from mentors and trying to learn something all the time. And it's easy to get boxed into your beliefs and your knowledge. And what's unique about podcasting is just like today, I'm sitting down with you. I've never met you before in my life. And we're going to have a conversation for at least an hour. How often do you have a conversation with someone for an hour? And so, getting to talk to interesting people from the Treasure Valley and from Idaho in general is awesome, because you can learn about like what's going on in the community. For us, we've had police officers on, historians, sex therapists, that network of people that are here locally, professionally. A guy that was in the Olympics that was shot 21 times.
It's crazy.
All right here. There's so many cool people in Idaho to kind of get to talk to and hear about their life experiences and try to pull something from that. And so it's been a great year for the Pro Edge podcast, just in the fact that we get to do that. And it's, we plan on making a good living from it eventually. But what's fun is we love to do it. And I like to meet new people, hear their stories. And I think it helps, me to be more objective and keep an open mind to things,
Completely.
As I've gotten older, I've changed my philosophies on a lot of stuff, religion, drugs and alcohol, different things with the government. But, those ideas and bases have been, either derivative from reading or from, hearing more intelligent men than me or women talk about a certain topic, whether it be one of the above. So, yeah, I like your studio here. It's a cool setup.
Thank you, man. Definitely, we put a lot of intention into it for sure.
Yeah, it's got a kind of a zen, comfortable vibe.
It definitely means a lot. Thank you for that. It's nice to have people who, we just met essentially, but you're able to feel that even just by being in this room, and that was a big part of the intention for sure.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right, man. There's something very special in being able to have an hour-long discussion with somebody that goes completely uninterrupted. Like my phone's on airplane mode. We get to actually engage in this, this one-on-one discussion as being two people. And to have, a background where we can build a new ground of discovery and meaning between the two of us. I had no idea the kind of benefit that would actually be bringing me in my personal life as well.
Yeah.
It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you look historically, cultures that don't share with each other, cultures that isolate themselves, become extinct, don't thrive. And I think as humans, at the basic level, there's a lot to learn from that. That like if you get stuck in your own path, your own ways, your own ideas on stuff, because when we were raised, we were all given these certain values by our parents or whoever raised us, right? And a certain structure. And that's all we've been taught, And so to get out there and kind of see what else is out in the world and experience it and talk to other people on things that they've been through, I think it's good. That doesn't mean you have to change the way you look at things or your beliefs, but it does, open your mind a little bit to the other possibilities.
Completely. And it helps you see other perspectives on the same topic, which is enormous for understanding what your comprehension even is. If you only think what you think, you don't have any other concepts trying to influence that, then how do you know what you even believe besides what you're feeling?
Yeah.
And so being able to just share a discussion, man, in hopefully a non-judgmental manner, you're able to really build a deeper understanding of what's going on in the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it's a unique opportunity for thought processing and for sharing ideas, and I've tried to use it for that and to just to get to talk to the different varieties of people is awesome. And you know, even if no one's listening, it's still, you still learn something, and you still have fun with it. But what I found out, if you have good conversation, people will come back and they'll listen. And or if you're, you know, the episode we did with the guy that got shot, it had about 18,000 views on YouTube. And what I found out, like, if you have police and shooting, no matter what in the title, you're going to draw a certain demographic of listeners. You're going to draw your anti-police listeners, and then you're going to draw your pro-police listeners. And there's no middle ground. Like, our episode wasn't even really about, you know, anything bad police-wise or anything like that, just the story. And we have a part 2 to it. But it's just funny how anything you put in the title or certain things, you'll see the demographics of who's listening, which is unique. And we learned that way just because of all the foul language and bad messages and good messages we got. Like I said, it's so goofy on how that works. But
well, I mean, we briefly talked about just that language is so unique and it's so new to us as people. I mean, it's only been around for a few years, essentially. So,
right.
So to learn how to even communicate what we're doing in a way that can be searchable, it's a completely new topic.
Yeah, it's a headline world or a clickbait world, kind of, in a sense. And yeah, it's just one of those things you got to do. But
yeah,
you guys are rocking and rolling. I love the studio setup on iTunes, Spotify. So hopefully this co-promoting will help both podcasts out.
for sure.
Yeah, and I like to do that in business too. I'm involved in real estate, a consulting firm and stuff like that. And I've used to have the philosophy like, you know, oh, you're not on my team, therefore you are the enemy, you know, in a sense. But I find that it's better to be supportive usually.
Yeah, especially in a community like Boise.
Yeah.
Or Idaho in general. You know, because, like, I don't know, it's weird when you think about how well people know each other here.
Yeah, and what I hear from people from out of the state, Jill Caples, she rapped with NWA. She came on, and she was just saying how, because I introduced her to a couple people, she's my neighbor essentially, but just how everyone in Idaho is so nice, and everyone she's met, and I'm like, yeah, like I've traveled too in the military, and like Idaho's a great place to live. Like people here are, you know, pretty friendly. If your car breaks down on the side of the road, you're probably going to get help. You know, and in most places in the country, or in a lot of places in the country, that's not the case. You know, you just don't pull over. But Idaho's still relatively a safe state, still pretty small. It's been changing a lot here in the Treasure Valley, but that's because people are finding out, you know, the cost of living and stuff like that. And it's kind of a catch-22. A lot of people complain, oh, we got too many Californians coming in. But they're not complaining that their business is thriving.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
You know, they do bring money, they do bring business, they do bring other opportunities. And, you know, I'm not the gatekeeper anyway, so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm from Idaho, but I didn't get any memos where I could keep anyone out.
Yeah, there's a really healthy level of perspective that comes with travel.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, I've traveled a lot the past few years and even worldwide. And coming back, Boise just seems to feel like home. I mean, It doesn't matter where I go or how far away or how long I am away. Boise, there's a very unique feel to this place.
Yeah, it's a hard town to like forget if you come,
Totally.
I think, for people, because it's just, it's a fun, clean city. It's usually ranked, I think, in the top 10 or top 5 of healthiest cities in the country.
It was number 1 for a bit.
Yeah,
which is super wild.
You know, we've got a really good community of outdoor fitness or what have you here, along with the gym community and sports and athletics, which is cool too. I'm just not a fan of winter.
Dude, I think it started today, actually. I think it's the first official day of winter.
I swear, from like June 15th to September 30th, October 15th, I love it here. Anything else is just like, who stopped the wagon out in the fucking desert with the wind whipping in at 70 and was like, let's build here.
It's insane.
If I was in that caravan, I'd been like, I hear there's an ocean. Let's keep going.
It's crazy because even this season, it's been one of the most mild autumns that we've had in a long time, it feels like.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, man, was one of the worst winters we've ever had, which was insane. It was like negative 19 degrees or something crazy.
Yeah.
It's super uncommon for here.
It is, yeah. The east side of the state, that's kind of where I'm from. Idaho Falls, American Falls, Pocatello. That side gets hit a little harder with snow. Idaho Falls is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know who wanted to. It's always like minus 10 in the winter, and the wind's whipping around. No thanks. So,
yeah.
you've traveled quite a bit. Let me ask you this, because what I'll do is I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about my nonprofit,
Yeah, man.
but I'd like to educate you or just see what you know. How much do you know about veteran suicide?
Not a whole lot. I'd like to hear kind of what you have going on with that.
Do you think as someone that's a civilian, kind of from the outside looking in, how old are you?
26.
26 years old. Do you think like a veteran suicide when you see it on the news? Does it ever cross your mind that it's a problem in the country, or does it randomly have to come up?
No, I mean, I think there's a deeper embedded sense of we don't handle mental stress or mental awareness enough.
Perfect.
Or well enough.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of where that mindfulness and meditation aspect of our platform can be interwoven through many different organizations, you know?
Yeah.
It's real, dude. It's very, very real.
Yeah, so what a lot of people don't know is, there's organizations out there like Ride for 22 who do a great job in supporting families of veterans that have committed suicide. But the reason they're Ride for 22 is because that's the national average per day. And on the civilian side, it's not much worse. It's 14 per day, so roughly 36 Americans a day. The reason I started my project, it's called the Shot at Dawn Project, is because there's no real answer in the country for our next logical step in suicide, and that's why I created the Shot at Dawn Project. And what the Shot at Dawn Project is, first, I'll tell you what the problem is. So the problem is, since 1979, 289,000 American servicemen and women have taken their own lives. If you put that in perspective, that's basically the city of Boise, in a sense. It's a lot of people. 289,000 heroes have taken their own lives since 1979. In 40 years. It's gotten worse since the pharmaceutical drug epidemic. If you talk to recruiters that deal with preteen recruits, parents have voiced concerns on the suicide problem with veterans and the mental health problems with veterans. And so the Department of Defense in 2008 created its own suicide division, and I was in the Idaho Army National Guard at the time and saw the changes in suicide prevention. Also, as a recovering alcoholic and been sober over 3 years, I kind of went through all that. I've been deployed, went through a divorce. So kind of all the things leading up to what you hear about as common with soldiers, I've lived through all that, right? So I kind of have a really first-hand knowledge on it. I've also had friends commit suicide that are in the service. I think since I enlisted in 2001, I personally know of 8 service members that I personally knew. And if I ask anyone that I've been in service with, I mean, those numbers just, we've all got a Rolodex of names, anyone that did over 10 years of, a handful of guys that took their own lives. So that's the problem. Everyone's pretty much aware of it in the country. I think Anderson Cooper a few nights ago did a big CNN thing. Trump administration's looking for this. And the VA has a 21-day inpatient program for these guys. They also have a psych ward. But I know there's organizations that have 12-month programs, but they're all brokered out. So the problem with our more extreme cases is pretty simple, right? Most enlistees come from a social demographic that's at the lower end of middle class or the higher end of the poor class, right? So usually these guys come in at a young age. 60% roughly of the guys that take their own lives are white males in between 19 and 24 that are in service. So if they're white males in between 19 and 24, there's probably in that social demographic a pretty high likelihood that they had childhood trauma. There was some alcoholism in the family, some other stuff before they even get into service. So when they join the Army, let's say, And they get a signing bonus for $25,000. They meet a girl, they get married, they get deployed, they come home 4 years later after a 4-year active duty stint and a deployment, and they've gone through a divorce. They can't manage money, so the money they've got over the course of 4 years is basically when they leave, they're sitting on a goose egg, or they're in high debt. They find out that they can't get a good job. They've got all these problems that stem from years and years of either trauma or alcoholism or years in the military, but those are all different layers. And a lot of times a guy like that will go into the VA and he'll get prescribed an SSRI and antidepressants now or anti-anxiety now or more, because everyone's on the oxys. Well, I'll tell you folks, oxys aren't what's killing people necessarily. It is a problem, but what the problem is now are these anti-anxiety medications and your antidepressants, and they fuck with your serotonin levels. So now you got guys taking these and they're just all over the board. You've got no real facilities to take care of the aspect of a soldier's life that was a hero at one time and now is in complete chaos and ends up taking his own life. So what the Shot at Dawn project is actually a real counter to that. So what I've done is I've developed a 2-year living facility on 40 acres. It's going to have condos, state-of-the-art gym, nutrition center, Whole Foods dining, new age therapy, spiritual healing, counseling. The great thing about recovery from drugs and alcohol is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Our TBI and PTSD center will be revolutionary. They're learning and making advancements and stuff like that every day. But what makes the Shot at Dawn project unique and actually have the ability to work is how it's set up. So when a soldier comes into the shot, let's say a soldier from Dallas that served in Iraq, attempts suicide, an overdose, and fails, and he ends up in a psych ward. Now, if I can get the VA to send him to me, my private facility, we have 3 phase lines. Phase line alpha is 90 days, and in that first 90 days, we run the member's credit. We do a full social background check, families, wives, ex-wives, stuff like that. And then we address, the other layers, the TBI, the PTSD, the alcohol. That first 90 days is to get a financial snapshot so we can repair that, fix his credit, right? A social snapshot, and then a drug and alcohol and mental condition snapshot in those first 90 days. In those 90 days, our goal is to wean them off any prescription drugs, unless deemed necessary by staff. So 100% though, my goal is with this facility is to make sure guys aren't taking anything that can fuck with their serotonin levels or their pain levels. We want to wean them off that stuff unless it's absolutely necessary, because when we do that, we're going to give the providers, when they go into Phase Line Bravo, a real chance to put them in the right counseling, to really see how they've improved health-wise and mentally-wise. And Phase Line Bravo's 9 months. They start working in the community. They also can get a job outside the community. They have to have accountability through a tribal aspect of the facility, i.e. ham radio operator, gardener. They also have to have a hobby, whether it be jiu-jitsu, which will be on the facility, archery, horseback riding, boxing. We're going to have some other athletic programs and some stuff outside the facility too for hobbies. And all that stuff to kind of give them that teamwork building aspect, that accountability that they got from the military, to kind of fill that back in. And while all that's going on, these guys are making huge steps in their life. I mean, we don't talk about the symptoms to suicide very much. And one of the major symptoms to suicide with our veterans is their financial situation. In fact, I know guys have written letters that they are taking their own life to ensure their family gets the $450,000 life insurance policy, because that's more valuable than their life. So we're going to change that. And the last phase of the program I call Phase Line Charlie is 12 months. And really what you have there is you have a guy that's been sober a year, right, or weaned off prescription drugs for 9 months, real sobriety. We say this too often with celebrities and other people that end up taking their life. Well, he had gotten sober and then he did it. Okay, well, define sober, because sober to the American public is he's not using cocaine, or if he was a drinker, he's not drinking anymore. But we allow people to say they're sober when they're on a prescription medication. Well, I'm sorry, if you're taking Xanax, you're not sober. And so we're really going to have data on these guys sober and be able to peel back all those layers. And that last 12 months, they're just kind of banging away, and getting ready for that transition back in life. And when they leave there, they're going to have $10,000 in their account. They're going to have the ability to purchase a home. They'll already have a great job. They might even stay in our community. I plan on building this in Canyon County or Power County, Idaho. And, we're really going to turn some lives around. But another reason this is a great project is because I have programs for the DoD. My goal is to make sure that the Department of Defense starts installing financial counselors, sex, drug, and alcohol counselors, and family care counselors for every 200 servicemen and women throughout the military, actually attacking the problem at the root from date of entry, from conception into the military. That's where we start teaching these guys these life skills, right? It's not just about killing or changing the oil on tanks or whatever your job is in the military. We need programs in order so these guys don't fall in those pitfalls with their bonus money or in divorce. And having a quarterly meeting with one guy, a financial counselor to a unit, doesn't sound like much, but I did 13 years, 5 active with the deployment, and I can't tell you one time I ever sat in front of a military financial counselor. I'm sure they could have brokered something out, some program out there. I know they have them, but does that change the game? I think it does. And so I have that answer. I have that solution. I have a solid business plan. I'm going to get corporate America to donate the money. And I have a program to bring all 29 NATO nations and 11 dignitaries to. That's 40 members quarterly through my facility, because we're going to be doing something totally unique here. It's going to be the only place like it in the world. You've got a tribal living facility with our most extreme cases of mental health that have been in combat and that are suicidal being healed. And so this will be a hub of learning, a mecca of, and so we're going to take $100,000 donations from each NATO country for each student they put through, and then each dignitary. And that actually makes the place profitable. And with the right partners corporately, I think that this facility works, because it's going to cost me $50.5 million to build. Operational, it's about 10.8 a year. But we're dealing with the most insured group in the country. Corporate America donates a lot of money to charities. If I can get a sponsor like Johnson & Johnson, and I'm on General Motors' docket to pick it up, why now we're in the game. And the facility, like I said, it's going to be an advertisement hub. You're going to be healing heroes. It's going to be the only kind in the world. So, i.e. the General Motors Haven for Heroes could be the name of it. The Onnit Gym. The Albertsons Whole Food Dining Center. I plan on selling every square inch of that so we can finally start healing. Our tagline is saving America's heroes, because we need to save America's heroes. And what we'll find out with this facility when we do it, we're going to start fixing it on the other side too, the civilian side, right? Because my facility can be modeled. It can be expanded. It can be put in the civilian sector. We can take the data and the tools we learn from that facility and apply it to our civilian population. And, I'm real careful to bash Big Pharma. And part of the reason that is the biggest pharmaceutical company, Johnson & Johnson, historically has been very supportive, right? No one was around for this anymore, but a few people in senior citizen homes. But during World War II, when government, calls all-out war, they basically they depend on corporate America to help them, and that's what happened. And Johnson & Johnson prides himself like that with many other corporate companies. Johnson & Johnson had a housewife invent duct tape in 1943 that ended up saving a lot of lives. They're very proud of that, and they should be. And I think that we need to acknowledge the war on suicide in this country is not just on the fringes of our veteran community, but it's our entire country. Like, we have to acknowledge that at some point. And I need corporate America to acknowledge it, because we need their help. If it would take the DoD and the VA 50 years to try to reverse engineer their red tape to build a facility like this. In the private sector, as a nonprofit, if I get help from corporate America, I can build it and then we can find ways to fund it. I'll lobby Congress to pay for the cost to go through for these guys because they are already insured, but we'll get the whole cost covered. There's a lot of different things we can do to make this work. It's just going to take the reallocation of money and the dedication of my team to make it happen. And that's what we're trying to get our message out to the president, to anyone that will hear us, because we do have a solution. And that's where we're at right now. We just need the media attention somewhat, because to pick up those corporate sponsors, and we're doing our due diligence on the back end, but the project itself, I think, can change the world. And then I have an alternate sentencing program to change the judicial system. I think that a lot of our nonviolent offenders that are, or even guys that are picked up on an accessory charge in a place like Memphis that are 17 years old, there's a lot we could do with that individual besides send them to prison and have that 80% return rate. So my goal with this project is really about America, fixing Americans. And it doesn't just stop with the veterans, but that's where it starts, because our heroes are our thin line that protect us from the rest of the world. And much like in World War II, if as a country at this time, just think about all the infighting. The left, the right, someone talks about a female this way or that, like everyone's real quick to blast, judge. There's the transgender stuff, the race stuff, the gay stuff. It's everyone's mad, right? Everyone's angry at each other and pointing the finger. Well, imagine what we could do if we just stop for a second and, much like in World War II, why do you think corporate America and housewives and kids sacrificed food and metal toys and gave them to our country? Because the alternative was speaking German or be annihilated. When death's at your door, it doesn't matter, and suicide is a nonpartisan killer. It does not give two shits what color you are, what your sexual orientation is. It doesn't give a rip about your religion, how you grew up, how much money's in your account, if you're famous, if you're not famous. It will sneak up and get you. And if we look at it as Americans and come together as Americans, like my project, and get corporate America to come together and the American people, how many steps can we take socially coming together as Americans? I'll tell you, in World War II, there were huge social strides made. I mean, imagine a world where a black man had to fight to even join the army during war, right? They didn't allow African Americans to serve. And then when they did, because the need of the country, right, then these African Americans had to fight their own commanders, basically, in order to go into combat. They weren't allowed to be combat troops. So here you have a socially and racially suppressed American that is still going through all that legwork to put his life on the line. And, there were a lot of strides, and that says a lot about those guys. And, we made a lot of racial strides because we had to as a country. And, I'm not sitting here defending anything we did racially back then or why it was structured at that, but I say, when we come together, look at the possibilities. So if we put our differences for aside about our sexual orientation or fat shaming or not fat shaming and all this other bullshit that we're putting attention on, and we just look to the left and right of us and say, okay, we're all Americans. If we come together against suicide, how can we as the people curb back this pharmaceutical epidemic, some people are calling it? How can we do that? Well, we need a facility that can provide the data that can back it up, right? And that's what the Shot at Dawn project is. That's that facility. We've done the medical consulting. We've done the law enforcement consulting. It's well set up. You can go to the website at www.shotatdawnproject.org and check it out. But it's the only next logical step in the country. And I hate to say I'm the guy with the answer, the only guy in the answer in the world, but that's the way we kind of look at it, and that's why we're doing it. I just took ideas other people had created and my own experiences and tried to put them together in one facility. And we think it can definitely win this battle and turn the tide of the war on suicide for the better, because 36 American a day. Now, if we had troops deployed to, let's just call it Mexico for cartel work, and we were losing 36 soldiers a day to the drug cartel, that would be a war. And so losing 36 Americans on our own turf to self-murder, we need to look at it as that. That's just too many. And I think when we look back at history, we'll look at this age as the toddler years and pharmaceutical medications that deal with depression and pain relief. And hopefully a company like Johnson and Johnson jumps on board with us, because we want to bring them in to help solve the problem. So that's kind of what we're doing with the Shot at Dawn project. Any questions?
Man, you can feel how much this means to you.
Oh yeah,
It's literally become a part of who you are.
definitely. I own it 100%, and I'll carry the flag until my last breath, because someone's got to do it. And that's why we're screaming so loud too. Is we think we're confident in our message, we're confident in the project, we're confident in our business model, and if we got the right support, and we're getting there. I'm having I've got stuff going on behind the scenes. I've made some really good contacts, and veterans that are kind of C-level celebrities, and I'm kind of working up that tier now to get to those Jockos, those Tim Kennedys, those Don Shipleys that run the fake Navy. Those are the guys that are going to help me push this project to corporate America. Veteran congressmen and senators. Eventually, they'll hear my message and hopefully see my business plan. And that's kind of how we're getting out there, and we're starting to see. I told my two business partners who I partnered with on this, who are not veterans, they were just venture capitalists for the most part, that they had a hard time believing me. I said, just wait. I know when certain vets get a hold of this, they're going to be the ones that push it. And in the last 2 weeks, we've had a couple former Navy SEALs hook us up with some legit contacts, from Chris Ruscio to Fox News in San Diego, who understands veterans because she's done a lot of interviews with the SEALs down there apparently, and that's how she knows my buddy up in Sun Valley that hooked me up with her. I've got a couple messages to Jocko through contacts, so we think it's only kind of a matter of time, and this thing's going to take off. And that's another reason I was like, hey, I should come on your podcast. It's a chance for me to pitch this project, And no matter if 5 people listen to this or 5,000, it only takes one email, one phone call can turn this project on its head. I mean, how desperate is our country when Anderson Cooper, who lost his brother to suicide 30 years ago, is doing a special that's 15, 20 minutes on veteran suicide and how the Trump administration needs answers once, because they're kind of on their heels here. And, I'm sure you could open my project business plan and find some holes in it, right? But I can adjust fire on those holes. And for the most part, we don't know. When people ask me, how do you know it'll work? Well, we don't. But the data shows it will be much, much, much more successful than any other program you have for some of these guys. Some dudes can go to a 21-day patient inpatient program and bounce back and be okay. Some guys can't, right? And I think if we really look at what I call the 360 on the veteran, basic, right? Social, financial, and mental. If we really go after those 3 problems with data that supports that, like gut biome supports mental health. So if we're feeding these guys whole, healthy food, nutritions, if they're exercising daily, if they're weaned off prescription drugs, if they have a role in the community, they get plugged back into the workforce, their credit's getting repaired. Mentally, what's going on in that guy's head compared to before he went in the facility, right? Hope. He's starting to see the writing on the wall that, hey man, I can bounce back from this. I'm gonna bounce back from it. And then pretty soon it's not a question, you've got your hero back, and we can hand that hero back to their mom at the end of the 2 years or year, depending on what the provider, deems necessary. But yeah, just and seeing Aubrey Marcus's book here, I'm a fan. I want Onnit.com to actually sponsor our facility. I've given a packet to bodybuilding.com, but those type of minds helped give me the idea, from your Joe Rogans to your Sebastian Youngers, and then my personal experience in recovery, seeing all the failure and all that stuff. So I would be hard pressed to say a medical person, say the facility was funded could look at my business plan and go, this will never work. And in fact, I talked to Dr. Craig Bryan from the University of Utah, who's considered the world's leading expert in veteran suicide. And, he's willing to provide my project data. So he must see something in it if he's, at least willing to do that.
How long have you been working on this? Because from just everything that you've already been saying, you've been able to gather so much information to help build your foundation and really project you forward. How long has this kind of taken you?
I partnered 2 months ago with my partners, and that's when we really started. The caveat to that is I've been developing this for 2.5 to 3 years. I initially had the idea on a veteran community for PTSD and this stuff when I first got sober. And I did some consulting with the Metals facility down in Arizona. I talked to them about recovery and blah, 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 blah. And I started seeing some big holes. Like, well, first off, when I quit drinking, I had drank since I was probably 12, 13, 14. I grew up in a small farm town, blue collar. Like, my mentors were fucking cowboys that wrestled, you know what I mean? And partied on the weekends, and they were hard men. And I mean, I started working on a farm when I was a kid. I started pulling rye when I was 8. And so at a young age, I kind of learned to work hard and then play hard on the weekends, right? And started drinking. And when I quit, I was 33. So I'd had years and years of this, and at, your teenage, you're developing, and they say your brain's developing till you're 25 or whatever. So I kind of wired it in my head for this long amount of time. And, it took me, and I don't have TBI or PTSD as a combat vet. It took me a year before I was kind of comfortable going out to like weddings, or I wasn't thinking about, if my buddy's having this thing this weekend, it's his birthday party and I got to go and everyone's going to be drinking. I just separated myself from them situations. And eventually all that anxiety, all that forecasting went away. But it took me a year. So what I realized is, hey, you can't just put a guy who's suffering from alcoholism through 30 days of whatever and expect him to bounce back, let alone if he's got PTSD, TBI. And then wait a minute, this causes these guys get in legal trouble. They go through divorces. They're financially fucked most of the time when they pull the trigger or take the last pill, and these stats are all going to be there. The data's there. So, the majority of them, and I think the DOD, I'm not going to say they skew the VATO. I'm highly suspicious of the 60% they claim that are on drugs and alcohol when they do it. I would venture to say it's more like 90% to 100%. There's probably a couple out there that could do it 100% sober, but everyone I've known, I mean, the last guy I knew had drank in a fifth right before he did it. So, just the whole thing of it is the time, right? And then if you take some of the tribal living aspects and nutrition aspects in it, you're really solving. So I started thinking of all these ideas 2.5 years ago and kind of developing in my brain. And I started writing out, all right, well, if you're going to have a 2-year facility, how would you structure it? Well, I'm not a doctor, but I've been through recovery, so I know the game, I know the system, I know how they operate, I know teams and stuff like that. Plus, I'm a pretty smart dude. I can read and figure some stuff out. So I wrote the phase lines myself before I ever even consulted with the medical community, and I really haven't changed them because recovery is pretty basic. I don't need to go in the weeds on spiritual healing or they're going to do this exactly. I'll let the medical staff handle that accordingly. You know what I mean? So I had pitched this project to multiple venture capitalists because a nonprofit is just a business, right? At the end of the day, you've got to raise money for a good cause, but it's a business. And so I was turned down a lot, and I was continued to turn down, and my own 2 partners turned me down 3 times. I counted 6, but eventually I'd come to them with some other venture capitalist projects, and when they partnered with me, they didn't know how prepared I was, and I should have told them because they were on their heels after week 1. I'd built the website. The consulting I had already done. So I had all their information. So I basically just started plugging and playing. I started calling news outlets. I got on the news in Twin Falls. and we just started kind of moving forward. And yeah, in 2 months we've gone a long way. We've gone from knowing what the fuck we are, who the fuck we are, to I've gotten the message out. You know what I mean? And eventually, I'm one of those guys. Like, I think that if you knock on the door long enough, eventually someone will answer, and that's our thing. We're just gonna pound the pavement and pound the pavement and pound the pavement until we can get corporate America's ear, in Anderson Cooper's ear, someone that can turn this project. Like, one email, I sent Anderson an email after he did that special. I don't know if it'll ever get read. I've sent him to Dr. Phil, Joe Rogan, regularly trying to get on his podcast. I've FedExed Joe Rogan a copy of my business proposal and Brian Callen to the Comedy Store, hoping they get it there. I'm doing anything and everything to try to get this message out there, because the project isn't about me. I wrote it, but I can't execute it. There's no way in hell. I developed it. I wrote out I designed the facility, the buildings, as far as on the site map and the layout and the memorial wall. I did all that. I did all the phase lines. I did all the consulting. But me, as a nobody piss on in Idaho, I can't make this project happen. So it's going to take one of those phone calls or one of those emails, and then a guy like Anderson Cooper or Dr. Phil or Brian Callen or Joe Rogan go, hey, this kid's got something here, And once I got on a platform like that, I think I could sell this to corporate America, because it has to do with them. It has to do with everyone. It's in our lineage. How many family members have you had in the military? Are your kids going to join the military? Do you have kids? If you don't, you might want to consider this. Someday you will have children, and someday your children may enter the service, voluntarily or in a draft. Do you want this type of program for your family, for our service members? Because that's what it comes down to. It's easy to point and say the military is over there, but look in your family lineage. Look in your corporate lineage. They're everywhere. They're us. We are them. So as Americans, I think it's a super important project, and I think socially we can make good strides as a country doing a project like this. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes excellent sense. Wow, man, your dedication is on a whole other level, and I know you know that. You feel it.
Yeah, I'm 100% confident the facility's going to get done, because here's the thing I got going for me. Sure, no one knows who I am, really. I've been called crazy multiple times. I'm asking, General Motors for $20 million. I'm going to ask other people for 5, 10 on this crab shot idea of a 1 to 2 year, rehabilitation facility that's tribal living. But my counter is, what else you going to do? What's the next solution in suicide? Is it another medication? Is there a magic pill out there? Is there a placebo effect? What do we have where we can pull data on this suicide that's really correct? And a facility like this, to get a guy to go through, and I've had criticism saying, hey, are they really going to commit to 2 years? I don't know, but I know a lot of them that the judge committed to 2 years to prison. I could bust those guys out if they're nonviolent and put them through my alternate sentencing program. I plan on pardoning 3 vets just to do that. I know this. I'm sure I could find a vet that's on his deathbed somewhere, that's a young man or an old man, that if I handed him a brochure to my facility and they thought, oh, you know what, I've always been a fan of the UFC, and they've got a UFC gym there, and I get to go do jiu-jitsu. Wait a minute, I'm going to get a leave with $10,000. They're going to repair my credit. Maybe I should rethink this. Maybe that fucking brochure is just enough hope to get that kid to change his mind. Or that man. Well, we have a problem with Vietnam vets still shooting themselves. These guys served our country decades ago. So this is a project that has to happen. And not only does it affect our veterans today, it affects our armed forces as a whole. I didn't call recruiters that deal with high schoolers for no fucking reason. I know parents are telling recruiters no. That's what a lot of people don't know. There is a vast pool of high schoolers that sign up for our military that pre-commit, whether it be the National Guard. I know the Navy's got programs for active duty even. So these guys go to boot camp before they're ever even out of high school. They go on their senior year break. I believe for the National Guard. I'm not quite sure how the Navy goes. But it's like a junior in high school finishes his junior year. His parents sign. He's already in the National Guard. He goes to boot camp over summer, right? He comes back. He's drilling, and he's still in high school. Well, parents have to sign waivers, and recruiters are getting shot down because of the suicide problem in this country. Where are we at 50 years from now if the general public is already saying no? You've got a fucking major issue on your hand. You know, we've got to be able to recruit into our military. Whether people want to admit it or not, we have to have the military. It's a dirty, dark world out there, and people want what we got. And we need young Americans, old Americans that are in the military to serve our country, to keep us safe and protect it from that. And this is affecting our recruiting. And I'm the only guy with a logical solution to try to reverse that. You know, and that starts by getting at the root of the problem. If I can't influence the DoD to start installing programs financially, socially, and mentally from conception, then I'm wasting my time. My facility could save every veteran that went through there. But what's the point if we're not fixing it from data conception, right? That's how we reverse engineer this suicide problem. We start at the root. When they raise their hand and they take their oath and they hop on that plane and they get on that bus, after that, well, basic finance should be taught in boot camp anyway. Managing a checking account, different stuff like that. But, you know, in that 4 to 8 to 12 to 20 years, 15, however it's broken up in their career, if they had quarterly meetings with drug and alcohol, family, sex therapists, and a financial counselor, how many more suicides could we avoid? I think it's tremendous. I think it would vastly change our suicide rates if we put more time in not prevention, but symptom prevention, financial prevention, divorce prevention, social prevention, pharmaceutical prevention, and drug and alcohol addiction prevention. Because there's all those layers that come into this. So, yeah, I'm 100% confident we're going to build this facility. It has to happen. And like I said, even though I'm screaming every day, some nights I'm up till 1 a.m. shooting emails, thinking of a way to get to a certain foundation or celebrity that could maybe help put enough wind under the sails of this thing. Like, I'm going to continue to do that and continue to do that and continue to do that because, you know, I look at it like this. 3 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, I knew this idea would work, but I was mocked basically like that. You're what? You know, it's a crazy idea, and really it is. And then 2 days ago, I'm in Troy McClain's office, a guy that knows Trump and won The Apprentice, and he's trying to help us. So that's how far this is. So if I can get that far, getting it built's easy. I think I've already overcame the biggest hurdles, and that's just getting a couple people to believe in this project. Because once a couple people understand it, that message will spread. And I fully believe this project will get to a point from either the veteran side or corporate America side where it comes to light. I get that interview with Anderson Cooper, let's say, and now we have a project. Because once the message is heard, like I said, what's your other solution? The government can't build something like this. Our alternates to suicide really are prison. And I hate to say that a 30 to 60 day inpatient and then sober living will solve the problem. It'll help a lot of guys, but man, we have all those in place already. Those have existed for decades, right? And we need them. Nothing that the VA is doing for the veterans now, we need to get rid of. Fuck, we like a lot of people badmouth the VA, not me. I think what they do is fantastic. They're operating within this bureaucracy that's been decades and decades of government red tape, and that's why they can't fix this problem. They're doing the best they can, and the DOD's on their heels, their suicide division. I can't, fuck, if I was a general and I got a letter that I was getting transferred to the suicide division, can't be a good thing, man. That's a tough fucking job to have, especially when what resources do you have? The Shot at Dawn Project would be that resource. We would be the Pentagon of suicide. We'll tie in other nonprofit suicide that are fielding these phone calls from family members, that 24% that the DOD gives that gave a warning that they were going to commit suicide, or warning signs like giving shit to family members, we're going after them hardcore. We're going to let everyone fucking know this facility exists. And if you're a combat veteran or a veteran that served our country and you qualify for the program and you've suffered from, financial collapse, divorce, alcoholism, TBI, and PTSD, and you want to put one in between your eyes, fuck, that's why I want this facility. I want to give that guy his life back, or that female her life back. And I'd be hard pressed to say that guys wouldn't volunteer to go to this program, because there was a time in my life I would have fucking jumped at it. You got to look at what we're providing them, right? We're really giving them some tools in life, and they're leaving there, a complete 360 from when they got in. You take a guy that was broke, lost his old lady, lost his house, lost his job, on a psych ward, and then you put him in our facility, and 2 years later, he's got new friends, he's got new hobbies, he's got $10,000 in his account, he's worked through his childhood trauma, his military trauma with counselors, he's been part of probably the coolest fucking facility in the world, right? You're going to have state-of-the-art gym, pool, and spa there with stuff to do jujitsu and boxing and archery ranges and horses and fucking Whole Foods dining, and all these little feathers in his cap when he walks out of there, compared to when he got there in just 2 years' time. And as a country, we don't bat an eye when someone goes to prison for 2 years, So I think we need to start looking at recovery a little deeper than 30 to 60 days, right? Because it isn't 30 to 60 days. It's a process. And some people need a more stringent process than others.
What do you hope to help them leave with? Because what about when
a life? So I'll tell you, it's I think Sebastian Junger, in his books Tribes, he describes being in combat at the Restrepo outpost in Afghanistan, real tribally, that when you're getting shot at every day and people are dying, if your job is the ammo guy or the machine gunner or whatever, it's very important, very vital. Much like in a tribe, if you're the hunter, or if you're the one that takes the young boys out to teach them how to fish, back in the tribe, everyone had a purpose. Well, a lot of times when veterans get back to society, working at Les Schwab Tire compared to going outside the wire on a road that's riddled with IEDs with 4 guys in your gun truck and 12 guys around you, it's a different job. It's a different feeling. It's a very awesome thing to be a part of, and at the same time it's terrifying, right? But you're fucking super important. As a convoy commander, the decisions I made affected not only my life but the life of my men. That's a lot of weight to carry, and I carried it with honor. But when you come home, right, and you're trying to transition back into the civilian world, or even if you stay in the middle, like we've got a problem. I had a friend December 11th overdose. He's still in the service. So actually I think I've had 9 now. So it's not just when guys get out. When they're not deployed, or when they are deployed, there's a 50% chance, if they're married, it's going to end. And it's really higher than that. I'm just saying that to be conservative. And we know that going in. So they come home, not only are you having a hard time relating because, before your job meant something. You were someone to your squad, you were someone to your platoon, you were someone to your company. Your life was very valuable because what the services you provided your fellow soldiers. And that goes from the lowest rank down to the top. Every man's there for a reason, they all serve a purpose, right? And we all understood that. And then you go to, and I'm not bagging on Les Schwab, I'm sure it's a great place to work, but let's say you're busting tires somewhere, it's hard to relate. And then you go through a divorce, financial problems, these things all kind of add up. And eventually what happens is your self-confidence starts going down. You start to feel lost, right? There's a sense of unhappiness. a lot of times you yearn for your military stuff, and the same time you hate it, because part of the reason these guys go through these divorces, and part of the reason this and part of the reason that, is because of serving their country, and they know it. And there's a little bit of resentment there, right? There's that resentment that, maybe my marriage would have worked out if it weren't for these fucks, right? And we've all had those feelings. I have. And so you've got all this stuff kind of compounding on you, and it puts you in a real vulnerable state. And then, if you're abusing drugs and alcohol, a lot of times these guys, first thing they do is they don't look at it like, well, my diet sucks and I don't exercise and I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking Monsters and then drinking a fifth of vodka every night. That's probably why I'm fucking sad and all this other stuff.
Destroying their bodies, man.
But then they'll go see someone for depression or something like that, and they'll get put on an anti-anxiety medication. Now we're fucking with serotonin levels and we're doing all this. So it's a lot to take on, right? And that's why I think the recovery aspect of it has to be real in depth, and it has to be taken at all angles in their life. And so my goal with the project is, when someone goes through that process, that they know my facility exists. So they go, you know what? Fuck this. I hate Dallas, or I hate this shithole town I'm in. My old lady's off banging the Pepperidge Farm, man. I'm going to accept it. My life sucks, but there's a Shot at Dawn project up in Idaho, and I qualify for it, and I'd rather do that than put one in between my head and let them win. And so my goal is to take a hero, because that's what I look at. I don't look at any veteran that's in prison. I don't look at any veteran that served our country subjectively. Like a guy that comes back and murders, does something goofy, let's count them out. But for the majority of veterans, I don't look at them anything other than heroes, right? Because they're the ones willing to die for your rights and for my rights, and to put their marriage at risk, and to put all kinds of shit at risk, progression in business. These guys face it in the police forces. They face it in regular business. These National Guard members and stuff like that, they're not discriminated against. They can't legally, but they are, right? Because if you're going to be gone 6 weeks out of the year for drill and training and this and that, and then possible deployments, you think that supervisor is really going to put you in a leadership role all the time when you're gone? No, we've seen it happen. And man, they know how to cover their tracks. And I know it happens in police forces, and I know it happens in others, but not specifically in Idaho. But so there's all those elements that add to what goes through these guys' mind. And so they give a lot in order to get little in return. I mean, I'll tell you right now, they don't fucking do it for the money. You know what I mean? So having a program like this for them, not only will it work, but like I said, I can get the hero back I know, right? Because at one point, those guys or gals were standing as steely-eyed killers with that American flag on their shoulder, right? Those are our children, our defenders of freedom. And fuck, if we can't give them their life back after they go through life's problems, and I hate to put it on the military, but a lot of these life's problems are aided by the military lifestyle. And so, yes, as a country, as a Veterans Administration, as corporate America, as a citizen, fuck, we got to figure something out to help these guys and to actually reverse the suicide rate. Another thing people don't consider is these guys live in a world of death, right? Especially your combat vets like me. So you go to combat units like infantry unit, whatever it is, when you make mistakes in training, people die. That's what you teach. Death is imminent, right? What's your zombie plan if you get ambushed? We talk about death. We deal in death on a daily basis. Death is at our door at a daily basis, and we think that way. Whether we're in combat or not, that's how we train, right? Everything is death. If you fail at this, we die. If you fail at this, we die. You die. This will get you killed if you fucking fail at this, right? They come home and they're failing at life. What do you think they're going to do? Failure equals death. They're going to take their own life. We have to be able to separate that, right? And so that's what this project's really all about. And listen, our infantry troops need to be trained like that, right? and our combat engineers and our Navy SEALs and our Green Berets and our Rangers and our airborne guys and everyone in the military needs to be trained like that. You fuck up, you can die. That's the reality of it. But we got to do something to kind of make that well known that, hey, in the civilian sector, you can fail time and time again in finances and marriage, and you can bounce back. If we got a financial counselor, a guidance counselor in unit, so don't let your staff sergeant over there, he's right. You need to be able to qualify for your PT test and do your push-ups because people rely on you their lives depend on how you function as a soldier, and it could lead in death. But when you leave here, you got to understand none of those rules apply anymore. And there's no differentiation in that. And that's why I don't chuckle. But no one ever talks about that. Why is it if you look statistically, it's a lot of our combat vets that are taking their own lives. Why do you think that is? They're fucking dealing in death. They're trained it. That when you fail, you die. Now, if you get that pounded in your head for 8 years of your life as a young, growing man, it's going to have an impact. And so I think it's related.
Wow. Conrad, this is an extremely important topic, and we could talk about this for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time.
No worries, man. I started rapping. And
you're sharing what you deeply believe in and what you're doing with your life, and it's inspiring, and you're spreading awareness like you wouldn't believe, man. Who knows what this will reach? Just through our platform alone and every other person that you're talking to, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing this.
Completely.
And because we really covered it well. I appreciate you giving me the time.
Man, you nailed all of that. Very healthy spectrum. For me, not knowing much about what you're doing, I feel like you covered the bases extremely well to give anybody who listens to this podcast a very good understanding of what you're going through, what our military is going through post-military, and what you plan to do about it.
What a lot of people don't realize is PTSD and TBI doesn't necessarily cause a veteran to commit suicide. Neither does alcoholism or drug abuse. There's layers, right? And so we have to look at each individually differently and dissect those layers correctly in order to get to the bottom of the problem, to get the data provided for our country. Because, like I said, this is creeping up into our social fiber as a country. I mean, who's the SNL star they just put into rehab? That's another guy they said that was sober, but then he's like, well, he's on antidepressants. It's like, is he sober? I don't think so. Anyway, I appreciate you letting me rap about it, man. It's
that was a pleasure. That was an honor. It was nice to hear more about your world in just a way that I've never thought about, and just the words you use, man. It's when we go through something, we're able to articulate that experience much differently than if I was just to think about it. Most of what you said, it's common sense to a degree, but when it comes with the words and the emotions and the experiences, those concepts become very, very real. Yeah. And I think that's the power in your approach, man. There's energy in what you're saying.
Well, I'm very patriotic because I'm a colorful dude, right? But I'm very patriotic down to the core. I'm a big historian, value our military and what it's done for our country. And so part of this is just that message. And that message can never be discredited. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in that our heroes are our country. And you can't talk about them without, for me anyway, without that passion. And like I said, this isn't a me project. This is an American project. Mm-hmm. And looking forward to the fruition of it. And I'll keep you updated. Excellent. And when we bring you on the Pro Edge podcast, I want to hear about your world travels. I'll let you just ramble on.
My man, what's the best way for people to reach you? Your email, you mentioned that in the episode. What's that? What's your podcast? How can people find out?
My name's Conrad Jeffries, ConradJeffries. I host the Pro Edge podcast. You can find us on YouTube, iTunes. Founder of the Shot at Dawn Project and president, www.shotatdawnproject.org. Find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Shot at Dawn Project on Twitter.
Perfect. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Peace.